Hi, I'm finally back with Fujifilm and I've been shooting with this camera here since April 2024, which is a Fujifilm GFX 50S2. My first trip with the camera was to Spain. Maybe there will be a separate video about it, but first and foremost this is about my first impressions of this camera. Buying a Fuji GFX was a big step for me, and it reminded me a lot of what it was like when I bought my Fujifilm X100 back in 2011. And with such big and passionate decisions, I have the ritual of wanting to take the first pictures of something beautiful. So I combined the first test pictures with a trip to Spain. Until then, I had been shooting with a Canon EOS 5D Mark III after briefly using a Sony a7 III, which took some great photos, but the Sony just didn't feel right for me. Originally I thought the Sony would be a good B-cam to go with my video camera, but it just didn't fit. The 5D was a great opportunity for me to get back to the essentials. A great sensor, a great and sturdy camera body, and all the features I needed for my photography. I'm still using my 5D and I don't think I will be changing it at any time soon. My style of photography has become much calmer overall, and many of my photographs are printed large, so I've been playing with the idea of medium format for a long time. I'm also attracted by the compression you get with the longer focal lengths and the aspect ratio. The GFX also has one of the selectable aspect ratios that is very similar to the Hasselblad XPan. I would like to try this out in the future. Please write me in the comments if you want me to make a video about it. I've already set the XPan format as a test and I didn't expect it, but it's completely different to cropping it from the image. Very inspiring. I can see myself testing this again in more detail, and I can imagine the format working well at night. Before I bought this camera, I looked at the GFX 50R for a long time and I struggled with whether I would prefer the 50R or the S2. One of the main reasons was admittedly that the 50R is an incredibly beautiful camera, but in the end I opted for the GFX 50S2. Both cameras have the same sensor. It's 70% larger than full frame, and with both cameras I have the option of using Fuji glass. The biggest difference, however, to the 50R is IBIS. This was important for me because I also plan to adapt old medium format lenses. Also, with such a large sensor and 50 megapixels, I think IBIS is a useful feature because I'm often out and about with the camera and I rarely shoot from a tripod. The video features on the 50 megapixel GFX cameras are available but not really interesting. I don't want to rule out that I might shoot a clip here and there, but if you want to film with the camera, you should take a look at the 100 megapixel models. These clips are filmed with the GFX. They don't have much significance because I didn't have an ND filter. The material from the 50 megapixel GFX is full HD, which is not really up to date anymore, but it looks quite good. I don't want to rule out the possibility of filming another video clip here and there with the GFX, but it won't be my main video camera. Before I bought the camera, I read a lot about the autofocus and how slow it is. Sure, the technology used is not state of the art, but as someone who almost exclusively uses AFS or manual focus with old glass, I was really surprised how fast the autofocus actually is. I was probably prepared because I thought, well, it can't be any worse than the AF on my X100. So if you are of a similar mind and don't plan on using the camera to shoot sports or any fast animals, the autofocus is much better than its reputation. Surprisingly, I was even able to take some street photos with this camera. I didn't expect this at all beforehand, but the autofocus was always spot on. So here are a few street shots from Spain. handling of this camera is unbelievably good. With the Sony a7 III I always had the problem that the camera was lighter and smaller, but the lenses remained heavy and sometimes became longer. This made the camera very front heavy in terms of weight, and I didn't find it comfortable to take it with me on longer trips. With the GFX there is room for my whole hand in the grip, and it's well balanced due to the weight of this camera. It may sound crazy, but carrying a GFX all day is much more comfortable than a smaller full-frame mirrorless, simply because it doesn't dangle around every time you move, and you don't have to watch out for it hitting anything. I may be biased, but for me as someone who always shoots with Fuji and Canon, the buttons and dials are in the right places. This is super subjective, but it didn't really take me long to get the camera working the way I needed to. Of course, there's still a lot to try out and discover, but I quickly got used to everything that was important for my work. I really like the menu. It's logically structured. The always on display on the camera is kind of cool, but I don't know if you really need it, but it's cool. The pictures that came out of this camera are just incredible, and even if it's almost blatant, the JPEGs look so good and the ability to use Fujifilm recipes is so much fun that I've set my Lightroom to handle RAW files and JPEGs separately. So I only have to touch the RAWs when the light was difficult and I really need to work with them. I currently have the 35-70mm lens on this camera, simply because it's really good for what it is. It's not particularly exciting and it's not the fastest lens, but it has done everything I've needed to on my travels and weighs relatively little. In the future I plan to add the 35mm 3.5 and the Metacon, although I'm curious to see how heavy the Metacon really is. The 35mm 3.5 because it's even more compact than the 35-70, and the Metacon because it has that wonderful Pentax 6.7 look. All in all, it's once again the fact that a Fuji camera feels more like a companion than a tool. With the X100 I was able to work on my photography in a much more focused way, and even with the shift from street to quieter subjects. The GFX is like an extension of my arm. Of course it's bigger and heavier than its full-frame competitors, but I don't mind that at all. I found all the functions quickly and the pictures from this camera look incredibly good. I'm really happy to have taken this big step. That's it for today. If you liked the video, please leave a like or subscribe. See you next time. Ciao.